Hello, Division 4. All right, so as we continue with our the last chapter or section of our founding people of Canada with the British, we're continuing on their influence on what made Canada a great country. So it says here, Great Britain is made up of actually 4 countries. We have England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Very important that we know those. And they joined together 200 years ago. They are sometimes simply called Britain or the United Kingdom, or sometimes this, you may hear the UK. And sometimes I refer to it as the English, but if you put it all together, it's more the British. And we talked about the Queen last day and our money. And the importance of England to Canada. Well, migrating to Canada, migrating, of course, means coming, like to enter, to travel. Like when birds migrate, they go from one place to another. So them coming from these 4 places into Canada. So before 1763, Canada was a French colony, and we know that from that second section of our unit. France and Great Britain were rivals for power and wealth around the world. Rivals, of course, mean they were enemies. They were in competition, and they both want the 2 things, power and wealth, around the world. In many places, their competition brought them into conflict. Once again, great word. Conflict means that they don't agree. Sometimes it can be an argument, sometimes it could be physical. Their rivalry came to a head in the 7-Year War, which lasted from 1756 to 1763. I wonder why they call it the 7-Year War. During this long war, British troops came to Canada and drove out the French. 1756, 1763. You subtract 7 years. And so the British came to Canada and they drove out the French. So basically they came in, kind of like how the French, a little bit on the Aboriginal, they kind of came in and took over. Well, now the British came in and kind of said, hey, this is a pretty awesome place. I think we'll set up camp here and hang out. France, and so in 1760, and so they fought. Of course, the French didn't just sit back and say, oh, okay, take it. They fought, and they had a war. And unfortunately, probably many people died. But at the end of the day, last people standing was the British. And so France said, okay, we give. And they signed a treaty of Paris giving Canada to British. So basically, they're saying, okay, fine, you win. But of course, we know that they let French keep a little bit of the land. Well, not a little bit of land, but a big chunk of land, of course, known as Quebec now, right? And it is the biggest province, so there is that. With Canada in British hands, many people from Scotland, Ireland, and England began crossing the Atlantic, right? So think of your map, and you have Europe over here, and you have Canada or North America over here, and in here, in our virtual map where I'm just showing you right now, is the Atlantic Ocean, right? And began to cross literally here. Scots were attracted to Nova Scotia. Scots, of course, people from Scotland. And you can see Nova Scotia, probably meaning New Scotland. In particular, between 1800 and 1850, there were 10,000 new arrivals in Nova Scotia from Scotland. So you can see that connection. One popular place for newcomers to settle was in Cape Breton Island. Beautiful place. I'd love to travel there. Check out, Google that. Beautiful seaside views there, and you can see, and that's where you think you get Atlantic cod and lobsters and all the. It's wonderful. Like I said, I'd love to travel there and see it. With rugged hills and sea reminded them of home. Right. Once again, people are probably homesick, and that's what Scotland was very similar to, right on the ocean there. Today, Gaelic, good word. That's the language spoken in Scotland, is still used there. And Cape Breton Island is known as the center of Scottish music in North America. Pretty cool. So one form of Scottish music or Scottish culture or arts is Highland dance. And of course, that's when you see them wear the tartan skirts, and they do a lot of kicking and dancing, very similar to the Irish folk music. It's very cool, a lot of bagpipes. It's a wonderful type of culture, and you get to see that a lot in that area. Irish newcomers preferred to settle in Ontario. So Scotland went to Nova Scotia, the Irish went to Ontario. The Irish were driven by the country by a terrible famine. So they were like, no food back in Ireland. So what did? They come over here to search for food. And as we know from our last unit, the French had some troubles with famine here too, right? They were also starving. They arrived in Canada poor and starving. They found jobs, though, in logging camps or in construction, building roads and canals. Very important. So their jobs were logging, of course, which is to take the trees down, construction, which of course is to build things, building roads and canals. And canals, of course, are you making places that the water can travel, kind of like So if you have the ocean and you want to bring the water in, or if you have a river, you would dig kind of like these big trenches, and then the water would follow into it. And then you could actually make it big enough that actually boats could go down it as well. In 1871, almost 1/4 of all Canadians were Irish. That is, so 1/4. That's quite a bit, 25%. During the 19th century, by far the largest number of immigrants came to Canada from Great Britain. So 19th century, of course, is the 1800s. 1800s. By far, it came from Great Britain. As a result, Canadians of British background became the largest group in the country. So the British background became the largest group in the country. They joined with the earlier French colonists to be one of Canada's founding people. Okay, so that's where it kind of brings it all together. The Aboriginal people here. Then the French came. They set up camp and they stayed for a long time. Of course, having the Métis, and they amalgamated a lot, or they joined a lot of their families together. And then later, once the British got word that this place is pretty nice, they came over, and then with force they kind of took over. But at the most part, all three are still visible today, but of course, we know there's not just that simple sharing of the land, and we'll talk more about that. Until next time.